All right, it's Tuesday. It's time for today's Bellringer. Remember, we got a short week this week, and then we go on break. So, yeah, let's do this right.
All right.
Hey now.
Mr. Kovacs class. It's Mr. Kovacs class.
You might learn a ton.
It's Mr. Kovacs class.
It's interesting too.
It's Mr. Kovacs class.
And he's super cool.
It's Mr. Kovacs class.
Of course, we were talking about this guy, Chuck D, Charlie Darwin, who is, he's one of the titans, right, of all time. Like everybody, if you think of like what are famous scientists, Darwin is one of them, right? He's up there. And of course, his whole idea was species change over time because of this process he called natural selection. Right, natural selection. That's what you want to associate with Charles Darwin. Right? He said natural selection is the mechanism by which species change over time. And since he did that over 150 years ago, really, it's hard to find any fault with his arguments. It appears that natural selection is, in fact, the mechanism for changing species, creating new species, taking old species and modifying them into something different, as we saw in the fossil record and as we see in living species today. Of course, you remember Darwin is famous. I mean, his story is great, and especially back when he traveled aboard the HMS Beagle. They went around South America and then back across the Pacific. They went around the world. It took him 5 years, but they went around the world on a ship. And then his stop at the Galapagos Islands, right off the coast, about 600 miles off the coast of South America, in what is now Ecuador. The Galapagos is where it usually gets credit for his great discovery, his great figuring out. But the reality is Darwin wasn't a big fan of the Galapagos. And to be honest, I don't think he could wait to leave the Galapagos when he was there. But he did notice some strange things. They stopped there for these guys, tortoises, and he noticed, right? Everybody who lived in the Galapagos could tell you what island a tortoise was from by looking at its shell. That got Darwin thinking, how come they're different on the islands? What's making them different? Why would they be so different? The iguanas of the Galapagos, he thought they were stupid and ugly and, dumb. But he did notice that they were similar to the ones on South America, but different. Like these guys actually went swimming to get food, which is like weird. And then he started formulating, well, how did that arise? What's the mechanism that causes some iguanas to live life one way and some iguanas to live life a different way? And of course, they're the birds, the Darwin's finches. Now, it's kind of a misnomer because Darwin didn't really pay much attention to the finches. He collected a whole bunch, didn't even catalog them very well. Darwin's finches became famous about 130 years after Darwin had already published this theory, when the work of two scientists named Dr. and Dr. Grant, they were married, worked on finches. They measured the beak size. Yes, they captured birds, measured their beak size, the different birds, and what they saw that was environmental changes, the amount of rainfall in particular, had a direct effect on the size of beaks. Beaks got larger when there was a drought. The hypothesis is because seeds got bigger and were harder to crack open when there was a drought. So the only birds that survived were the ones with the big crushing bills. Now, of course, on the Regents, they love the finches. You'll get to know finches really well. Diagram. You're going to have to know how to read this diagram, right? Here, let's try practicing. Okay, I mean, it's not that hard, is it? But the finches, so, Darwin didn't really work with the finches. The Grants did, but they're become the example of how you can measure how environmental changes affect species changes. And that's what's important. All right, if you have lab today, you're gonna begin to watch what Darwin never knew. And if you don't have lab today, you'll finish that tomorrow. And remember, no school this Friday, so let's make something out of this short week.